Good Monday morning, guys. My name is Jerry Miller, and welcome to the Monday Market Monitor here on the I Love CVille Network. The Monday Market Monitor presented by Closure Title and Insurance, presented by Ally Property Management, and yes, Realty Partners. Guys, today's program is going to be an impactful one. If you care about the Shenandoah Valley, if you care about Augusta County, Waynesboro, if you care about what's happening on the other side of the mountain, we have an expert in the house, and Andrew Costa of the Costa Group. We're going to talk real estate and the crazy trends we are seeing today on the Monday Market Monitor. Judah Wickhauer is our director, fresh from vacation, kiss from the sun, looking sharp, and I would say happy. I love to see Judah Wickhauer happy. My friend, studio camera, let's welcome a true cast of characters, Keith Smith, Quinton Beckham, and Andrew Costa.
Thank you.
This is first writer on the show. Good morning, my friend.
Cast of characters, huh?
Yes.
Hey, a little shout out to you. While our director was on vacation, you did a great job both sides of the camera. Well done, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You did a good job keeping me in control. That was your job.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Quinton Beckham is back. How
Welcome.
are you?
I'm doing good.
You freshly haircutted?
Yeah, it had gone a lot of weeks without a haircut, so it was time.
The high and tight looks good on you.
It was time, and now I can ignore it for longer.
I think it takes 8 to 10 years off you.
Let's hope.
It does?
Oh, excuse me.
Let's
I just
hope.
laughed. I apologize. I came out loud. I apologize.
Make sure you're in the mic there, my friend.
Oh, sorry about
And let's welcome Keller Williams' Andrew Costa.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Good morning.
Appreciate
Keith
it.
Smith, tell us the game plan today.
So the game plan today is, first and foremost, to introduce Andrew Costa of Keller Williams Alliance to the world, right, and tell a little bit about himself. And then we're going to take a deep dive onto what I refer to as the other side of the mountain and what's going on over there, and then also what kind of impact it might be having on this side of the mountain, and talk a little bit about some great projects that are coming up on your side of the mountain, and
Absolutely.
process, and a couple different things. But please start with who Andrew is and what's your life story, brother.
So my business life began when I was 19. When I was 19, I went straight into real estate, and I am 35 years old now. And so ultimately, I've been in the business for almost 16 years. It'll be 16 in February. I've seen the market crash shortly right after I got my real estate license, which was a lot of fun, unfortunately. But I learned a lot of valuable lessons. You learn a lot of valuable lessons when the market crashes. And then I've seen it rebound to where it is today. It's the best I've ever known it to be. And it's wonderful. I love real estate. I love land, commercial, anything real estate.
So you got out of high school,
Got
got a license, went to work, and
Yep.
you've never worked for anybody other than yourself since then, right?
I was a janitor in high school. So
Okay, I said after high school.
after high school, no, I haven't worked
But
anything.
just think about that. So
Yeah.
you got out of high school, you did, but because in this business, right, you work for yourself. You're our own little independent businesses.
Correct,
Right.
yeah.
We work underneath the benevolent the dictator over there. That's who we work under.
That's right.
My case, Mrs. Smith, but I have 2 dictators in my life.
I understand.
But that's pretty cool, man. You have not worked for anybody but yourself. You hung in there.
Yeah.
And you have a beautiful wife and a couple of children, right?
Just one.
Just one.
Yep.
So tell us about your family life.
We've been married for almost 7 years.
Wow, good for you.
Thank you. We've been together for a little bit longer than that, but for 7 years. And we have one son. He is 2.5. He was born on Christmas Day, so he's a Christmas baby.
Oh,
What a
good for you.
gift.
Yep.
We have a lot of similarities right here.
We do.
Costa and I. I didn't say you, Costa and I.
I know that.
Age.
You were pointing at me.
Bride,
I was trying-
same old kid, entrepreneurs.
I was trying to get into the younger crowd, but it just didn't work so good. So look, you've been there since 19. This is your hometown. Let's talk about the changes from when you were 19 to now in the real estate space.
Sure.
Big high-level stuff.
Yeah. So when I first got my real estate license when I was 19, 20, 21, the inventory was around 1,000 homes to 1,300 homes on the market. I think right now, the last time I checked it, it was somewhere closer to like maybe 300 or below. So the inventory has dropped, and that's not, obviously that's not just Waynesboro, Stanton, Augusta County, that's everywhere. But that's what's really driven the market and the prices of properties the past, 2, 3, 4 years, is just seeing the inventory drop lower and lower because people have to buy a house and they have to move somewhere and they have nowhere else to go. They have to compete. So, beyond that, it's just very competitive right now.
So when the market crashed, you were, 11, I think? It was 12. 12. And the market crashed, and you're on your own in real estate. What kept you in it? How did you work through that, and what kept you in it to be where you are today?
Great question.
That is a great question. I had a really awesome mentor at the time. He was a top-selling real estate agent in the nation, and he wasn't anymore, but he had gotten out of the business. And I actually approached him and asked him if he would teach me how to do what he did. And a lot of it started with just doing cold calls or what they call warm calls in the real estate business, people that you know, and just asking people who they might know that want to buy or sell real estate. In terms of like what kept me in it, really not wanting to work anywhere else and do anything else. I just loved real estate. I love the challenge that every single day you can wake up and you have nothing that you carry over from the previous day. You have to start at zero. And I kind of like the challenge and the idea of going after it,
So what year did you start again?
2000, let's see, when did 2006.
Nice.
Yep.
So I happened to run numbers all the way back to 2006.
Yeah. Nice.
So in 2006 in Augusta County, the median sales price was $295, and this year, so for year to date, was $275.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about that. That's actually a pretty interesting number, because when you take a look at Lake Monticello, when you look at what was in 2006 versus 21, 2006 was 245, and year to date so far in Lake Monticello is 315.
Yeah.
I did not expect to see it when I ran those numbers this morning. I didn't
expect a larger delta, did it?
I expected a considerably large. I didn't expect it to be reversed.
Right.
I expected 2021. Now this is just Augusta County. Now this is not including Waynesboro, and it's just simply a snapshot of Augusta County. Mm-hmm. Can you explain that? Does that make any sense to you?
It's a great question. You're testing my memory going back 19 years or 16 years, 15 years.
I had to write it down. I get it.
When you get older, it's easier to remember that far back?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
What did you do yesterday? I have no clue.
Yeah, no idea.
I have no idea.
My guess would be, are those median numbers or averages?
They're all median. Yeah.
They're a median?
And it's for attached and detached, so those are townhomes.
Oh, interesting.
And detached on
Yeah.
that. But I did, and the reason I did it because I compared it to Lake Monticello, which has the same product type.
Sure, yeah.
And I was just it was really surprising to me. There's almost an $80,000 increase in Lake Monticello, and there was actually a little bit of a decrease.
Right.
In that. And who knows? Numbers are numbers, and what's the old saying? There's lies, damn lies, and statistics. But I was really impressed by that change in the number, and it just didn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
And I thought, since I had you in front of me, I'd ask you.
Yeah. I don't know. I'd have to go back and do my own homework, but my guess would be that a lot of it has to do with inventory.
Sure.
Inventory always drives prices up or down. And what was the difference again, did you say?
So 295 to 275. So
okay.
it's awfully
so in
close.
06, it was 295.
295,
and now it's 275.
Yeah. So, but one of the things from my perspective that when I talk to clients that want to buy on the other side of the mountain, because that's where the price point is.
Yeah.
And this is somewhat of a loaded question, and you lived through it, so you can help me out with this here. Their concern is gas prices.
Yeah.
And when gas prices go over a certain dollar amount,
sure,
it seems like the property values drop a little bit. Mm-hmm. And the reason I'm confused because I didn't see that in the numbers here so much. So is that a falsehood for somebody? False thinking on our side? Is that making any sense? That question?
Yeah, no, it's a very good question. So my guess would be it's more of just maybe a pain, and I guess it depends on who the buyer is.
Sure.
If they're some people who live on the other side of the mountain, they go in the office every single day. I have a client right now. She used to come to downtown Charlottesville every single day. She doesn't do that anymore because of what happened with COVID.
Yeah.
And so she works from home. So whereas that might have affected her greatly, it's not as much of an impact, now as it maybe once was. So.
I also wonder, everything's an impact in comparison to the other things. So, yes, you have gas prices going up, but if you have house prices outpacing that, then the trade-off is still, if I'm married and I have 4 children, which will never happen, then it might be a good trade-off to have the larger house at the price that I can afford and pay a little bit extra for gas.
True.
In the long run.
Sure.
Especially if you can work from home.
Especially if you can work from home, although a lot of the information coming out says that we are overestimating the percentage of people that are actually doing that even at its peak during COVID.
That's a whole show into itself, because some of the data that I'm reading is exactly right, Quinton. The numbers are not as big as everybody thinks it is, but if you take a look at the NAR data, National Association of Realtors data, this whole trend of moving out and that thing has been going on long before COVID came around. I think COVID just kind of upticked it a little bit.
Right.
We're going to talk here in a few minutes, but I did some homework over the weekend about things that are happening on the other side of the mountain from a development perspective, from an economic development perspective. We mentioned earlier, Amazon is there, right? Cava, so those who live in Charlottesville over on by Barracks Road, this little Cava salad thing, they're opening up a facility on the other side of the mountain, and at the tune of hold on a second here, of $30 million and bringing 52 new jobs on the other side of the mountain. So it seems like jobs are being created there. Mm-hmm. Housing is being created there.
Yeah.
So maybe this travel back and forth really isn't as happening as much as we think it is on this side of the mountain.
Right. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. Yeah. There's always new opportunities. A lot of times we'll see brands from Charlottesville come over to Augusta County and Waynesboro and Stanton. It's a great market to be in. Some people don't want to take the trek over the mountain, Afton, when it gets foggy or rainy, or snowy, which it hasn't been for a while, thankfully. But ultimately, there's a lot of opportunities. If somebody owns a business in Charlottesville, there's a lot of opportunities in Waynesboro.
And I think we experience our own little form of globalization. Globalization is a great word. Never has a word gone from obscurity to complete incoherence so quickly as globalization. But the ability to do more things from home in your total life. How many people actually go out to stores to buy things versus going to Amazon? How much planning can you do from home as opposed to going to a travel agent's office? The overall needs of life. In totality, you can do more of that stuff from home. I think it gives people more options. Certainly, I think all of us as agents, although we are certainly in certain geographical areas, our clientele are spreading. So I may have somebody start with me looking in Charlottesville, and 3 weeks into the process, we are now looking in Augusta. And I know that has likely happened vice versa.
Absolutely.
And so I do think we're seeing those sorts of what were totally local events spreading out.
So Andrew, last 12, 24 months, your listings, right? This is your home spot. This is where you do most of your work.
Yeah.
How many buyers are you seeing coming from our side? This is a 2-part question. Coming from our side of the hill, and how many agents are coming from outside the area to buy with buyers?
So your first question was how many buyers are coming from Charlottesville area?
How many, in your experience, in your listings, are you
Yeah.
seeing lots of buyers from this side of the mountain buying over there? Is our feeling being warranted or being proofed by the actual buyers?
I think so. Yeah, I think quite a few are actually coming because the price point is substantially higher in Charlottesville, Albemarle County, even parts of Nelson County are a little bit higher. So to travel, depending on where your work is located, 20, 30, 40 minutes, it's not that bad. When I'm driving from where I live to Charlottesville, I only make 2 or 3 phone calls and then I'm already here. So, it just depends on who you are and what you do. But yeah, it's pretty straightforward. There's a lot of buyers just because of the price point, I think, that drives people over to Waynesboro and Augusta County.
And I also think there's so many things that Stanton offers that are underrepresented or maybe not underscored in the same way. We talk a whole lot in Charlottesville about Charlottesville, One of my running jokes is that Charlottesville's favorite thing is Charlottesville.
No doubt.
And sometimes that overshadows a lot of really interesting and good options for entertainment, for dinner, for community that you see in that area. And so I think if you are coming from, let's suppose you're moving from Northern Virginia like so many people have, a 30-minute drive from Augusta to some places is nowhere near the heartache, or adrenaline rush that a 30-minute drive in Northern Virginia is.
Yeah, not at all.
And it's probably 4 times as long. And if you can have access to all of these other things where you don't have to cross the mountain, why not? Why not get more bang for your buck and set yourself up for that?
Well said. Well said. What is the perception of Augusta and Waynesboro of the Charlottesville and Albemarle County housing market?
Great question.
How does Augusta and Waynesboro see the price points, valuations, and the marketplace?
So I think that a lot of people, and again, I'm only speaking from my experience, people that we talk to, I think a lot of people are looking at, well, I can get a 4,000 square foot house in Waynesboro for maybe $350, $400, maybe a little bit more depending on what the finishes are. You can't usually do that in Charlottesville or Albemarle County. So, I think
have an 8 in front of it if you do.
Yes, it does. Yes, and so that's really the biggest drive, I think, for most people is, like Quinton said, just kind of piggyback on your term. You get more bang for your buck. You get a lot more house. You get more acreage. You might get a mountain view. You might get less neighbors, depending on what's important to you. There's a lot more options in Stanton, Waynesboro, and Augusta County, just depending on what you're looking for. And there is the downtown scene of Stanton. They actually shut off the main street in Stanton. I don't know if you've been there.
Yeah.
I think that was one of the smartest things
Brilliant.
I've seen them. It's amazing. It
Restaurants
changes
with tables and parking spaces.
Exactly. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Which leads me to a thought. As we're going to talk about some of the developments and some things that are happening in and around the area there. I just wonder how much of some of the stuff that is a positive that happens there so quickly, is there less red tape? I don't have the answer for this. Is it easier to make those changes and get developments and other stuff moving on? And, is this going to continue to create this market for buyers, for home sellers, and also industrial? I know there's a lot of commercial buyers that are skipping out on what is the car footprint entirely to move to the Shenandoah Valley and are looking from, down south in the valley all the way up to Harrisonburg for their installations.
And our chemistry is working because literally as you were talking, I'm making some notes. So I did a little homework on this over last week, taking a look, because everybody who knows or watches the show, that's my kind of thing. That's my little ballywick on that end of it. And there's a particular project, talk about red tape, that got approved behind the Walmart over there. And the name of it is Creekwood Village Complex. It's 208 units, 62 of them are single-family detached, 110 of these duplex units on it, and 36. And it's an interesting thing because we were having a debate on Friday, and one of the conversations that came up about rezoning and projects and so forth and so on was the impact on the school systems. And I've actually been communicating with elected officials in Waynesboro and planning directors. You know what their number one concern and impact? The concern on impact on development is?
Schools.
It's not the schools.
It's not.
Healthcare. It's the healthcare system. And because the buyers are like my age and up, and a large percentage of them, and
Right.
and apparently there's this larger impact, and I know this is near and dear to your heart, the healthcare system, but I was shocked to hear that.
What are you saying? Proximity to like strong hospitals and GPs?
No, it's the impact on the local economy, the impact on the community is the healthcare system, right? How it seems that the folks are more, or the planning folks and the governmental folks are more concerned about stretching the healthcare system a little thin versus the school system a little thin. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, we hear schools, and it just really made me think we're not really talking about what impacts it may have on the healthcare system. for what it's worth.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Well, certainly every demographic brings its own set of impacts.
Sure.
And we have this discussion several times on this show, and you've had it multiple times without me. Not everybody that moves in is your standard yuppie couple with 2.1 children and 2 cars.
And a dog.
And a dog.
And a furry.
Yeah, and a dog.
Yeah.
A cute little blonde dog.
Yeah, sure.
But each place has to sort of assess what they're building for, who's that demographic, and what's that going to look like. But I still wonder, no matter what the issue, because everything's going to have its infrastructure item, if you can group developments, it's less cost to the county,
Sure.
and you can have more real estate tax, more tax income to the county or the city that's involved. And it just does seem, maybe I just don't hear about it, but this certainly seems like an easier run over the mountain
So it's an interesting thing.
we're grouping these counties and cities, the over the mountain. And I wonder how much more they're going to benefit in the next 5 years versus this side of the mountain.
So to play off of that a little bit, the interesting thing about this project, it was a Charlottesville developer and a Charlottesville builder that did it, that did the project. Charlottesville developer is developing it.
Yeah.
Charlottesville builder is building the units. And it was interesting about this parcel to go and we talk about red tape and green tape and all that kind of time, and I'm kind of somewhat giving a shout out to the other side of the mountain, and it's something that maybe this side of the mountain may be looking at, is this particular parcel. It was already rezoned. It was already zoned. It was in the comprehensive plan. It was in the growth area. It said, this is what we want to have on it. But what the city of Waynesboro has a little bit differently in it, just to geek out on this for a moment, the master plan, which is what this is, a master plan community, must go through the public hearing process for the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors, which is really unique because it gives the public an opportunity to comment on that, where in some other jurisdictions, once it gets past zoning, it's more technical, and there's not a lot of public comment involved in it, which I thought was really super interesting. And I learned all this from actually communicating with those planners on the other side of the mountain, and that's where I got this, hey, we're worried about the healthcare, we're not worried about schools, which, again, was shocking to me because I never heard that before.
Yeah, that's a good point.
We'll get to some questions from the viewers. Bill McKenzie, Andrew, are there any investment buyers or investors coming to Charlottesville City to purchase on speculation based because of the current upzoning future land use map? Basically, more density, upzoning opportunities here in the city of Charlottesville has created a bullish market for investors to speculate and buy parcels where down the road they can potentially add duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, and make some bang for their buck.
To do that in Augusta County, Waynesboro, Stanton area?
In the city of Charlottesville. So
Charlottesville.
folks from Augusta, Waynesboro coming here.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah.
Are you hearing of any?
I personally have not. That doesn't mean that it is not happening, though. So.
Interesting. My last 2 sales at Lake Monticello were buyers coming from the other side of the mountain back on this side of the mountain.
Really?
What do you attribute that to?
That's a great question. I was going to ask Andrew that same question. It was a bit, surprising to me, but they are moving out of that. Now, I think these particular 2 buyers wanted, they had boats, they wanted to be on the lake.
Oh, yeah.
They were golfers, that kind of thing. And so I think that might have been the circumstances to it.
Sure.
But that was the first time in forever I've ever heard somebody coming this way instead of going that way.
I'm going to have to watch that because you've piqued my interest now. I'm not sure what would drive somebody to do that other than, like you said, Lake Monticello. There's not really the lake community.
But to answer Bill's question from somebody who is in the field a little bit, I'm not so sure the investors are ready to pull the triggers on that yet. There's a little bit too much uncertainty. The process is going to take way too long. We're just in the comprehensive plan portion of it.
Sure.
Then they're going to have to change the zoning ordinance, and so that means you're going to have to buy something and hold it for quite a few years before you can do anything for it. I think investors would rather put their money someplace else that's going to get a quicker return.
Yeah, speculating with the comprehensive plan is a great thing to do, but it's a long-term play for sure.
It's a long-term play.
Absolutely.
Brooke Miller giving you some props. Quinton, we'll go to you here in a matter of moments. Sonia Dameron giving you some props here.
That's my mom.
Okay, Sonia.
Hey, Mom. Go, Mom. Your little boy's doing great.
From Evan Hansen. Having lived in Nelson and now Waynesboro, I'll say the process of dealing with inspectors and zoning professionals is markedly easier on the residential side Evan Hansen, good comment right there.
Yeah.
Can you speak to the streamlined process of development that you have experienced? Because in Albemarle County, we represent a couple developers. It is difficult, and we
Yeah.
talked about this yesterday in a post I did. 24% of the cost of new construction associated with red tape and governmental bureaucracy.
Yeah.
Quite the opposite in your neck of the woods.
Yeah. Well, I can't speak to the Charlottesville side, but I know that most projects are favorably looked upon. Augusta County, Waynesboro, Stanton area, they want revenue, they want income, they want taxes. I mean, that it helps the entire community when they can obviously have more people living in the community and doing business in the community, eating in the community. There's a lot of good things that come from people being entrepreneurial and having people come over.
So there's a reason why CAVA's investing $30 million and bringing 52 new jobs. A, because the people are there.
Does it say where the location of that will be?
In Mill Place Commerce Park.
Mill Place. I'm not sure where that is.
But in any event, so it's coming in. They're investing $30 million. They're going to build a 57,000 square foot facility. So there's going to be engaging contractors, local suppliers,
Absolutely.
employing folks in that, and then there's going to be 52 long-term jobs. And the reason that I suspect they're moving that way is because of the interstate interconnection and all that stuff.
sure.
But they have the employment base.
Yeah. And
out there.
land is less expensive there too,
Sure.
substantially.
Sure.
Yeah.
And the green tape is much
Yes.
easier over there.
100%
Well, and I think you also have an area where geographically there's already a couple of points of density with a lot of space in between them. And so the opportunity, well, I would estimate that the general assumption of what is a normal travel time when you're on that side of the mountain to get from one place to the next is a very, very different expectation than when you're on this side. Our area and its surrounding area tends to be very Charlottesville-centric. We have some other conglomeration in Crozet, and then we have some in and around Forest Lakes. And everything else is just infill in between, so you have a different expectation of access and how far you're going to have to travel here than I would imagine a lot of people do over there. That provides a lot of opportunity for investment for a lot more commercial building that is getting traffic, vehicular and foot, from a wider area and a larger population.
So there's two other benefits the other side of the mountain has: getting away from process, getting away from cost and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And we talked about this on Friday. It's a term in our business called the geometric configuration, right? What's the size of the parcels? What are they shaped like?
Yeah.
And the topographical configuration. So you're in a valley, right?
Yeah.
So you have lots of farms, you have lots of larger parcels of land
Absolutely.
that can be used to this, that are connected to interstates. Plus, you don't have the topographical. So you start looking at Crozet, or you look at Lovingston, which is great, but the topographical configuration and the layout in Lovingston makes it a little difficult to develop.
So you're saying it's too bumpy?
Got lots of
Yeah.
lot of
This is a
bumps.
little more flat.
A little bit more flat. Roller
Yeah.
coaster, Lovingston's roller coaster.
Yeah.
Out there is kind of like you and I, a nice stroll on the beach, nice and level.
He has this thing with his family to use a certain number of big words on every show, and so I appreciate topographical.
I think that's two right there.
For the month. I used up my 2 big words for the month.
Lisa Costello, a question for all of us. Very commonly known amongst us at Waynesboro that professionals commute from Waynesboro to Charlottesville. It would be interesting to know and get Andrew's take. How many of Charlottesville's teachers, nurses, police officers commute from Waynesboro to the city of Charlottesville? That is a great question.
That's a great question. I don't have the data on it, but I know from experience that quite a few do. Nurses, I guess maybe doctors are a little limited because they sometimes have to be within a certain geographic
Usually
area.
about 35 miles.
Yeah, so that's a little tight on certain areas. But yeah, police officers, we sold a property to a police officer last year. So yeah, it happens a lot.
70%, this is for you, Lisa, 70% of City of Charlottesville employees, and that's the entire jurisdiction, over 70% to be in fact, cannot afford to live in the City of Charlottesville.
That's exactly right.
So that is a concerning statistic that we must change. She also emphasizes that there is a lot of older families in the Shenandoah Valley. Do you expect the boomers to sell and exit some of their houses, and that could lead or put tailwinds behind the market even more? Because there are a lot of boomers in the Valley.
I think so, yeah. I think the inventory will be driven a lot by the people who are getting older. And, people who are younger, my age and even younger than that, they're buying these homes that are a little outdated cosmetically, taking out the pink tile in the showers and whatnot, and remodeling things and making them a little bit more.
Well, you don't like pink tile?
I grew up with pink tile, so that's why I said pink tile.
You don't like seafoam green? It's coming back, brother. The
like
70s is coming back.
Retro.
Trust me. I've got the polyester suits.
Keep saying that.
Hold on to them.
Keep saying that.
I've got them. You don't think I do. So look, to go back to that question, currently what's available for sale in the city of Waynesboro, the median, so that takes out the high and low,
Yeah.
is 3 bedrooms, 2 baths on 0.7 of an acre lot, 1,700 square feet for $219.
Yeah.
So the bottom line is that's where it's going. And I can tell you, since I chair an affordable housing nonprofit, to hit a family of 4, to hit a 80% area median income for our area, your side of the mountain is much less than ours, you can't afford much more than $225. Right?
Yeah.
So right off the bat, if I'm a police officer or I'm a nurse or whatever, hitting that workforce number, that's just where I'm going to go.
Right.
Because that's where I can afford.
It makes sense, yeah.
How's the townhome and apartment opportunity for
There's not
service industry? Okay.
Not enough.
Okay, walk me through that.
There needs to be way more. It depends on what you're looking for. But yeah, that's, for whatever reason, I don't know why that is. The past 15, 16 years, I've always wondered why there aren't more. My first house is actually a townhouse. I loved it. It was great. It was in Waynesboro, but there's just none to choose from. And there occasionally will be somebody building new ones. There's one that comes to my mind that he's getting ready to do something, but they're going to be rentals. They're not going to be to purchase. So
then it would be safe to say, we spend a lot of time in this area talking about we need more housing in and around Charlottesville, and we need more housing in and around Charlottesville, and no matter how affordable it may be and where it sits on the scale, we need more housing in and around Charlottesville. And I just wonder how much
do
longer.
we need more houses around in and around Charlottesville?
Did you catch that?
I caught it, thank you.
I wonder, how loud is that chorus in the area you're working in? Has it hit yet? And how much longer until you get there?
it's not loud enough, and I hope. Well, it's tricky because as a seller, you want the inventory to stay low. If you're a buyer, you want the inventory to go higher. Ideally, you'd fall somewhere in between. When you talk about townhomes, there's two different kinds. There's one that are all on one floor, and then there's ones that are 3 levels or 2 levels. And the ones that are all on one floor take up more space, obviously. But when they take up more space, they appeal to an older demographic. And I think that's really, Jerry, kind of piggyback on what you said earlier, I think there needs to be more one-level townhomes or condos just because the older demographic needs them.
So the 208 units that are being built over at Creekwood, 62 are single-family detached, masters on the first floor.
Yeah.
110 are duplexes, master on the first floor.
Mm-hmm.
They only have 36 townhomes out of 208.
Wow.
New construction in Waynesboro. So they answer the question.
Mm-hmm.
I can buy a brand new construction home for $245,000 detached, 1,500 square feet with a garage and a master bedroom on the first floor.
Yep.
So the buyer, the market, is saying, well, hell, for $245,000, I want a single-family detached. I want the white picket fence.
Mm-hmm.
I want the yada yada yada.
Mm-hmm.
There's literally nothing available on the new construction in Waynesboro, because I pulled the numbers.
Right.
That is not a single-family detached
Right.
home. There's no townhomes. There's no nothing.
Right. Yep. There needs to be a lot more.
What do you think? So we got tailwinds and momentum behind the market. We got not enough inventory at Elmore County, escalating prices in Albemarle in the city of Charlottesville. We have the opportunity from work from home, although the gentlemen have indicated maybe those numbers aren't as deep as we think. We got gas prices for the most part, that are in check, although they're increasing. We got what this gentleman drives, electric vehicles that are making transportation much more efficient and effective. Any concerns of headwinds or factors that could slow your market down? And what are they?
Great question.
I think the biggest indicator, if the market's going to shift, the inventory is going to go higher. I think once the inventory goes up, I think the prices will start to come down because people won't they won't get 8 offers on one house. It'll be 3 offers, and eventually it'll be 1 offer, and then eventually it'll be 35 days and it hasn't had an offer. So, that reminds me of when it was 2006, 2007, 2008. People would ask me, why is my house not under contract? And it's like, well, it's only been 32 days. Like,
well,
that's okay.
You're still inside the norm, yeah.
Well, that goes back to the interest rates, right? Right. And tomorrow we're going to have an appraiser and a loan officer in here,
That's
and
awesome.
we've had this conversation on the show, if not once, 1,000 times. Everybody now thinks 3% or sub 3 is normal, and it's not normal.
Oh my gosh.
So what do you think 4%, because that's where we're going.
Yeah.
I think next year, you're going to start seeing creeping up to 4%.
Yeah,
That's what the experts say. Will that have a negative impact? Will that slow things down on your side of the mountain?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, people who are on the fence, sometimes they're on the fence, but they see, we just bought a house about a year ago. It was 2.75 was the interest rate, fixed for 30 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It was great. But our previous mortgage was 4.3. And it's, at
4.3 is cheap money still.
I know. And that's when I bought my house in 2016, I thought to myself, wow, that's not a bad deal.
I'm not allowed to say how much my first house is any longer. There's a rule. There's a whole
There's
rule.
that rule and the rule, when did you move to Lake Monticello rule.
But now-
Mustache Dan Pennant is watching, and he's going to hold you accountable
Yeah,
right now.
we're not allowed to do either one of them.
He says both every show.
You say it each time?
Yeah, he says it every show.
I think what's interesting about interest rates, though, is interest rates are more important than price. If you look at long-term wealth building,
absolutely.
if you look at the cost of home ownership, interest rates play a much greater role in what your 10-year net gain is in any home that you purchase. And so even though we've seen these prices and all this competition, we've had interest rates that are so amazingly, incredibly low, it has supported this process. Now we're expecting them to creep up. We're wondering what the feds are going to do. There's more talk about inflation. It's even showing up in the comic books. The comic section, Dilbert, I think,
Oh,
had
I
a
thought
thing.
your comic books were getting a little bit more expensive that you bought.
No. I mean, like, they're talking about it in humor.
sure, yeah.
And so I think I'm interested to see how all this plays out. And it affects Augusta and that market the same way it does everybody
Well,
else.
that's a macro thing.
And they're still going to have more opportunity to adjust for that because they're having an easier time with development. They've got more land to develop on. And the number of units per acre based on the flat topography,
The bumps.
the bumps
Less
versus the
bumps.
flat,
Less
gives
bumps.
them a better opportunity for density without having to pack cheek to jowl.
Their construction, their development costs are considerably more cost effective. Not to get in the weeds on it, except when it comes to sewer, because you need gravity for sewer, then you have to pump it, but that's a whole separate conversation. By and large, the flatter the land, the more cost effective it is to develop.
Lisa Costello, I spoke with a real estate agent who said here in Fry Springs neighborhood and other areas of Charlottesville often sell the same day they go on the market. Is that the same case in Waynesboro?
A lot of times it is. There are pockets where, you'll see 0 days on market, which is always interesting. You'll see 1 or 2 days on market. Certain neighborhoods, which is true of everywhere. I mean, certain neighborhoods, certain locations, certain streets even, if you want to get that specific, will immediately sell or have multiple offers the same day that it's listed.
No, the tree streets, right?
Yeah, the tree streets are, I mean, I have so many friends
Yeah.
who've moved to the tree streets in Waynesboro. I visit them. It is charming. It is, I mean, it's gorgeous.
It
It's
is.
gorgeous. Put in perspective the value proposition of the tree streets and why people are buying there.
So, it's close to downtown. I'll give my friends who own the Farmhouse on Main coffee shop a shout out.
There you go.
I've been there multiple times.
It's an
That's a great
awesome place. We love that place. That's our favorite place to go. It's close to downtown, so if you want to walk downtown, they're constantly trying to improve downtown Waynesboro. It's not downtown Stanton, so obviously it's a much different situation than that. But there are big plans to do some big development in downtown Waynesboro. So maybe we can talk about it some other time. But it's walkable. I think that's probably the most appealing thing is it's walkable. You know, for 6-8 months out of the year, it's beautiful just to walk and see the historic homes, you know, built in early 1900s and things like that. People have restored quite a few of them. So.
Do we think Waynesboro is going to become, I'll throw this to you, do we think Waynesboro is going to become the, how do I put this? Albemarle County and the city of Charlottesville, Quinton, for so long have made Greene and Fluvanna and Louisa super affordable and welcoming and approachable from a price point standpoint. Is this going to be 2.0 Greene, 2.0 Fluvanna or Louisa?
I think certainly if we shrink the bullseye and we're only looking at certain areas, you're going to have the high price points and the low price points. I think where I feel more optimistic about Augusta County's ability to affect that and interact with it is they just don't seem to take so long.
Yeah.
You know, one of the rules of business is a bad decision is better than no decision.
Amen.
Yep.
You can't continue to just do nothing and expect knots to unknot themselves. You have to do something. If we always want to have all the schools, all the infrastructure, all the roads, and all the commitments in place before we stick a shovel in the ground, nothing's ever going to happen because we sit there looking at all sorts of things at some point you got to cut an apple to make a pie. And so I think the advantage I see over there as I've watched it, and I'm not the expert by any means, is they actually do things. And perfect can be the enemy of good, and it's certainly the case in housing and developments.
Well, a prime example of that is what they did with the Stanton Mall, excuse me, I apologize. I probably just got myself into a little bit of trouble there with the Stanton Mall. So what they've done with the Stanton Mall, and Augusta County's done this, and this process went through pretty quickly. And we spent a bunch of shows talking about our famous mall here in the city of Charlottesville. Right. And what they've done is they've allowed some redevelopment happening with that mall where it's a mixture of different businesses, but on top of it, there's 14 acres of that is going to be allowed to be turned into apartments. And so they will be apparently affordable homes, affordable apartment units. But this process went through relatively quickly by our standards. I think maybe by their standards it may have taken a little bit longer.
Right, sure.
But to Quinton's point, you know, it seemed like everybody got on the same page and said this was a better thing than having an abandoned mall in the middle of our community.
True.
And it seems like it's moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of a sticking point for a lot of people because everybody that grew up there knows it as the Stanton Mall and has memories and movies.
Sure.
You know, there's a big movie theater there. You know, I grew up watching movies there. So there's a lot of different
But it's
memories.
no different than the Fashion Square Mall.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a lot of memories attached to, but I mean, it's going to change, obviously, you know. Last I heard it was going to be a truck stop, so that's interesting that it's now going to be apartments. So that's
apparently 14 acres of it just been rezoned.
I believe you. Yeah, I would rather it probably be apartments because there's a huge need for that.
This is from the Virginian on the other side of the mountain.
Yeah.
Katie Pearl, even the prices at Goodwill have gone from $2 an item for child clothing to $3 an item. Hashtag inflation. I'll tell you what, if you go do grocery shopping, my wife talks about this all the time, all the prices have gone up. Look at a gallon of milk has uptick. Ray Cadell, who does a lot of deals on the other side of the mountain, says this for you guys. Just a small microcosmic view of over the mountain market. In the last 25 months, I've personally sold more homes in the valley than in the last 34 years of my career.
Wow.
Valerie Easter has a similar comment on LinkedIn, which I will get to right now. She says, the rising prices in CVille have driven people to Stanton and Waynesboro. I've sold more homes in those areas in the past 2 years than almost my entire career here in Charlottesville since 2007. People are having to commute for work 30 to 45 minutes in order to have affordable housing. It's unfortunate, and the county of Albemarle and the city of Charlottesville does everything it can to handcuff small business owners and take their profit. It's unfortunate, and hopefully, Jerry, you can help. That's Valerie Easter on LinkedIn right there. The business climate, Andrew. What are you seeing? The hospitality, the welcoming, you've touched on this already. Put in perspective how it's certainly welcoming for entrepreneurs.
Well, I guess it depends on what type of entrepreneurs you're looking for. But like, for example, we talked about land being cheap. There's a company called The Plant Company.
More cost effective.
More cost effective, yep. There is a company called The Plant Company that just moved into Stuart Draft, and they're building a very large building there to grow plants in, to sell. I think they wholesale plants. But the price of that land was very, very inexpensive compared to probably anywhere else you're going to find 200 acres of land. So, it depends on what kind of business. Airbnb is a much more friendly business over there. A lot of people are kind of catching on to what's happened here in Charlottesville, and they're trying to do more and more Airbnbs.
So if you take an opportunity to look at the ED, Economic Development site for Augusta County or Waynesboro or even the town of Stanton, and you take a look at that, the answer Jerry's the plethora, it's another one of my big words, the plethora, plethora of diversity, right? From Airbnb to, I was reading, they just approved a solar farm there. Out in Augusta County. Yeah. So I mean, it's not laser focused. It's pretty wide across the board. Everything from a food processing facility to an Airbnb to a
solar farm.
Solar farm. Thank you. Solar farm on it. So they seem to want that. And to quote our friend Neil Williamson from his sales tax revenue, Augusta year over year, first quarter 20 versus 2021, was up 18% or 17.17%.
Yeah.
Third highest. The second highest was Waynesboro. Green was the highest. So between Waynesboro and Augusta County, one was up 20 and one was up 17% year over year. That's tax from sales tax revenue. So that means people are going there to buy stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I know from a personal perspective, I actually go to the Lowe's and Home Depot in Waynesboro than I will on this side of the mountain.
Yeah.
Plethora is my favorite word, too. John Jordanus just put that on the feed.
I have no idea what it meant, but it sounded cool, didn't it?
Quinton just left a good comment here. You talk about the real estate market and the inventory and the car footprint. Well, how are you going to characterize the Charlottesville-Albemarle Association Realtors footprint in the next few years?
Well, I think that's dependent on what happens between now and then. There's a lot of economic drivers. There's a lot of that local community can do, and we're seeing a lot of counties surrounding us really step up to create development and communities that are accessible to everybody. We would have never thought 3 years ago to see the boom in Nelson that we've seen in the last 18 months. So it shouldn't surprise us if we're talking about a boom over the mountain. And I think all of us in real estate, as Ray Cadell pointed out, our work territory has just spread. We have to be more aware of what's going on in a larger geographical territory. You need to have partnerships with other agents that are in territories that you don't have enough bandwidth to keep track of.
Which you do.
And you have to be able to pass those back and forth to meet your clients' needs, because where they start their search at may not be where they end up, and it may not be the best fit.
So one of the best, in my opinion, one of the best things that Charlottesville Association of Realtors has done in a long time, other than have its current president, is in 2014, we did a data share with your side of the mountain. And what that means for folks that don't know, so I can now go and dig into your numbers on the other side of the mountain. I can do days on market. I can take a look at others. Prior to that, I would have to have called an agent on the other side of the mountain.
In terms of the MLS, you mean?
In terms of the MLS,
yeah,
thank
absolutely.
you.
That's
in
been
terms
a
of the
huge
MLS.
blessing to have
So,
that.
and one of the things that I am excited about what CAR's doing is we're growing our data share footprint around the area because of what Quinton just said. We now, it used to be we were just having, I was an expert of Lake Monticello, right? That's not where the world is any longer.
I mean, is it just going to be one Commonwealth Footprint? Because of technology?
For the MLS, you're saying?
Yeah. I mean, we can do Facebook Live tours. I mean, we have some agents that are selling homes via Zoom and Facebook Live. And as the technology becomes more ubiquitous and approachable and scalable and more robust, is it just going to be a Commonwealth MLS?
I hope not. I think there's a value to having local MLSs with local governance that share data. And all things will be decided by the consumer. We are going through not anything new in terms of real estate, and certainly not anything new in terms of business and sales, but the ability of consumers to directly affect how we interact with them is so much greater now than it was 10 or 12 years ago. Information is so much more publicly available. People that are super connected have an opportunity to see more houses faster in greater detail than they ever have before. And the pandemic really accelerated that. So long as this is a potential, we have to keep up with it because the consumer is going to dictate this. We also have to do this as realtors because my job is to take care of the client to the absolute best of my ability to meet their needs and to find the best home for them. My opportunity to do that successfully goes up exponentially if they're flexible and I can search a greater number of counties and a greater geographical territory.
So it's not only the search, it's the quality of the data, and that's why this is so important. That's why these CAR is so important as far as managing, and GAR, which is on the other side of the mountain, and we're just sharing data. I mean, I'll just do an example that happened this weekend. We're doing a coming soon in a portion of Lake Monticello. I had a phone call from a Zillow person wanting to see a different home that was sold 2 years ago, right? It was the quality of the data just wasn't.
But that's going to change. The quality of the data is going to become more reliable as the technology becomes more robust.
But it's only technology is only as good as the folks that input it into it. If the information is inputted incorrectly and without some sort of oversight, you have bad information, which is even worse. And that was the problem in this case. And I literally had a woman driving down from Northern Virginia screaming and yelling at me that I was lying to her, that the house was sold 2 years ago because Zillow said it was available. Well, it wasn't. And now I started off a potential sales conversation with an argument. And so whereas I said, so do me a favor, go on to whatever access you could get to our MLS, and it was shown it was sold. I sent her the link anyway. It was sold 2 years before.
Andrew Costa. Okay, go ahead, Quinton.
And I want to push back a little bit. Yes, there's a ton of information out there, to a degree, it's becoming tighter in terms of its standard deviations. 2 standard deviations out is a lot tighter than it was 5 years ago.
Well said.
Yeah,
and so little of that information actually speaks to the value of a property. And so you have to have something that connects the two. Databases don't stand in your house. Databases don't see your neighbors. Databases don't know what's going on in the local community.
Can't tell you the quality of the roof.
If we reach a point to where everybody can look it up, you have to find a new line of work as well because the value of the show would go down. There is an intrinsic value that a human perspective that is looking out for your best interest brings to the table that will never ever be replaced. Now, the ability to narrow down and say no to things that would have been a waste of time becomes much greater as that data becomes more reliable. We're getting much, much better at the no's, being able to sift through a greater number of properties and say no more accurately. That doesn't necessarily improve the yes.
Well said. Well said. This is a follow-up question on this. Why don't you jump in here, Andrew Costa? Okay. Nicholas Erpe, Chief Marketing Officer of Merchant Financial Services, said, I asked Keith and Quinton this question, and I'd be curious to hear Andrew's take. Will the virtual side ever take over real estate, or do you still feel it's necessary to be there to, quote, feel the house? This is an interesting question for 36? 35-year-old.
Yeah.
For a 35-year-old
yeah.
here who's growing up in a social media technology-based world. I mean, you're 35. That means Facebook and social media came out when you were in high school, right?
Yeah.
So you've known this forever. What do you make of Erpe's question?
Does he mean specifically like Zoom, like taking somebody on a FaceTime call through a house, or
all technology, all virtual?
So what he's asking is, will it ever be the same as Orbitz? right? I think that's the
As
question.
orbits?
Yeah, like if you go into orbits, it used to be to get a flight ticket, you went into
You
travel
threw me for a
agents.
loop. I was like, what is orbits?
Yeah, sorry. You would go into a travel agency. It's an app, right? You get
No, I know what it is. Yeah, I know. It's like- yes,
TripAdvisor,
absolutely.
Kayak. Yeah.
kayak,
Absolutely. No,
whatever.
I'm with you.
I believe that's the question.
I think companies like Zillow and places like that are trying to slowly but surely work real estate agents out of the equation. And I think if you're just looking for data, it can do that. I think if you're looking for an experience like a customer would of any other business, I think that's really where you get lost.
Do you know how Zillow makes its money? You know how it makes its
How
money.
Zillow makes
Okay,
its
so
money?
Zillow is a brokerage now, so let's remember that there's rules around that. And I think that we have to remember that it's a very large consumer population, and not every real estate model, every path to home ownership is going to suit every single person. Certainly, if you have somebody like Jerry, how they buy and sell is going to be different from the person that's the first-time home buyer that just graduated UVA, and we need to be able to do all of that.
Yeah.
A huge component of that is virtual and internet and data, and there's a variety of ways for businesses that are involved in that to make a living. But I think as to the question of will virtual ever replace a real estate agent, no, because somebody's got to sit across from this person and counsel them and help them walk through. And a real estate purchase is not there's no such thing as like when I go to get this jacket and I'm oddly shaped. And so I go to one person who measures me, inputs the measurements, picks the material with me, and sends me a jacket. Real estate transaction is the intersection of 8 to 9 professionals, multiple level of interactions between those two, a variety of pitfalls to avoid, as well as all the things that have to happen with the other side of the transaction.
Mustache Dan Pettit says, but Quinton, you can be an agent to get leads from Zillow.
Yeah, again, I don't know that I think there's a lot of ways to ask a single question that throws a wrench in the works that's a fictitious wrench.
The 101 needs to do is look at the public filings for Zillow, and you can figure out how Zillow makes its money.
It makes its money by advertising agents and getting listings.
All one needs to do is look at the public filings, and it's a pretty evident how it makes its living. But we talk about this all the time. Personally, I love all this data stuff. Mm-hmm. I love all these apps because, much like Quinton said, it's a tool, right? So we talk about my little brother on the show. That's probably the other thing I'm not allowed to talk about anymore. My little brother on the show, that's the trim carpenter, high-end trim carpenter in Richmond, right? This iPhone I hold in my hand will never put the trim up on the wall.
Right.
This iPhone on my hand will never answer the question as Jerry just said. So, hey, Keith, tell me about the roof. Hey, Keith, tell me about this. Or, hey, Keith, tell me about what's going on in the market. This will never, ever do that. Mm-hmm. What it'll do is, based on Facebook and posts that Mr. Miller is making for us, I've got phone calls for a future listing that isn't coming soon that I've already got appointments stacked up for. They've saw it in there, they whittled it down, much like Quinton was saying, this is what it's becoming a tool to do that. So I've never been afraid of that. Never understood why people, freak out about Zillow or Truly or Realtor.com or whatever it is. To me, it's just a tool to help my client do the best business that we can, or help cover them the best way we can. Are you seeing that differently, or am I babbling?
No, I think there's a lot of truth to that. I remember when I first got in the real estate business, somebody approached me. I don't even remember the name of what they were trying to sell, but it was legal services. You could basically call an attorney anytime, but you all shared the same attorney. I can't remember the name of this thing. But the concept is interesting.
Until you got a conflict of interest.
Yeah, well, and then ultimately, it's the same idea as a real estate agent. It's the data is great, but if you actually need something, you may need to talk to somebody, and they may need to help you process through it because everybody's different. Everybody has a different personality. They might need to go look at 4 houses and then chat with somebody about it for 30 minutes and say, what should I do?
Well, this is why we're doing this on Monday. We're bringing in an expert from the other side of the mountain. You know, this
Do
phone.
you like the moniker the other side of the mountain?
It's fine.
It's probably exactly how he refers to Charlottesville. You know, the other side of the mountain.
How do you refer to this side?
Charlottesville.
No matter which side you're on, the other side of the mountain is the other side of the
What
mountain.
if you're right on the mountain? Well, how do you refer to it then?
The mountaintop.
There you go, Andrew.
So
Then
if
you just talk about those people
so
down
Andrew,
there.
if I offended you, I apologize.
he's not offended.
Augusta County, Waynesboro, physically the other side of the mountain from where
You
we're
have to
coming.
work a lot harder to offend me if
There
you
you
want to
go.
offend me.
Give me a little bit of time.
No, don't do it. We like this guy. We like this guy. Ray Cannell, who's an experienced agent, 30 plus years in the game. Our
Yeah.
business is more and more complicated, not less, and demands a quality, qualified professional. Let me ask you this question.
That's a good statement.
That is a great statement. You're 35 years old. So you very conceivably could be doing this for another 30 years. And you probably want to be doing this for another 30 years because that means you've been successful.
Yeah.
What is your crystal ball of how you're going to position your business for success for 3 decades to come?
Wow, that's a big question. I think it always goes back to customer service. It always starts with the person that you're working with, and you have to make sure that you hear them, that you listen to them, and that you exceed their expectations, because if you don't do that, somebody else will. In terms of technology and things like that, I mean, that's really hard to predict just because we don't know what could be down the road in 3 years. That could make Zillow irrelevant. I mean, who knows? At some point, Zillow actually didn't. To my knowledge, I don't think Zillow was around when I was a real estate agent in 2006. I could be wrong.
Well, there's a lot of companies and brokerages that were not around back in time.
That's true.
And I think picking one out of the crowd to focus on is kind of a red herring.
Yeah.
Because again, we're back to, technology is a tool. It's a widely used tool.
Sure.
And I think for all of us who are agents and brokers across the spectrum, no matter what our name is, embracing that technology and using it to best effect is a good thing. Mm-hmm. It serves the consumers, and it gives us more time to focus on the pieces wherein we truly bring value. Ray's right. Our job has become more complicated, and it has not become more complicated because of the technology. It's become more complicated because of the localities and because of the geography. And so those are things that I think we really do, as you said. You have to keep your client first. You have to know their needs and their wants, and then help them navigate this when they have an abundance of information that may not still tell them the most important things about the place that they're looking at to purchase.
Right.
3 things show up on my phone every morning at 5:30 in the morning to help you with that question.
Yeah.
Be professional, be caring, and be trustworthy. And the be professional end of it. And people ask me why I do this show. I do this because I love Jerry, love sitting next to him, love doing this. But this makes me a better agent. This makes me better at what I do because I have to be professional. I have to dig into the information. So be professional, dig into the information, constantly seek education, constantly seek, because what's going to always happen is change. Caring is simple. Care about others, which you do wholeheartedly, and be trustworthy, which is very self-explanatory.
I think the agents that learn, to answer your question, 30 years from now, I think the agents that learn every single day will still be here in 30 years if they want to be.
That's what I meant by be professional.
Yeah.
You have to learn every day. Everything today is different than it was yesterday.
Very much
and
so.
you keep on.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to see some of the emphasis on education and professionalism continue to increase. There's now a minor at UVA in real estate.
Nice.
There you go.
You can't take it as a major, but there's a minor, and there's a real recognition on how so much intersects in the world of real estate.
Well, we learned this from Lisa Steravant. You know why this is a minor? This is second GDP in the state of Virginia. Our industry as a whole, real estate as a whole, and all one needs to do is go look at 2008, 2006, and the great unpleasantness, and it impacted us all, real estate.
And I think I think Mr. Erpe, either one of them would agree with me that
They're both watching. All three of them
that
watching.
in the end, we're always talking about economics. We might change how we talk about it in the lens, but it's really, when we talk about affordable housing, when we talk about ease of development, when we talk about Charlottesville versus over the mountain, everything we're talking about and how this is playing out is economics. What's the median income? Where does that median income match the home price? Where do they have to go to have that median income? That's what we're talking about the whole time. And I think it's really easy to get sidetracked into things like technology, which is the cart and not the horse.
So we're going to tackle some of this professional stuff tomorrow, Jerry and I, with an appraiser and a loan officer, because I had an interesting question. I'm going to put it on the a car Facebook group here in a little while. What defines a bedroom? Great question.
Closet?
No,
Windows?
that you are incorrect.
No
What
closet.
Is no closet.
A bedroom doesn't have a closet?
It's according, and we're going to talk about this tomorrow. The state ordinance says
It's got to have windows.
that it has to have a certain amount. It's 5.7 square feet. Igor, we'll talk about this more tomorrow. But I was asked that question of a client over the weekend, and I asked Yona that question, my supervising broker. Said, what defines that? And so the state says you don't have to have a closet. Then the caveat that is that you have to check with the local jurisdiction, because the jurisdiction can override that. But from an appraiser's perspective, his mind is blowing.
Well,
From an appraiser's perspective, from a lender's, does it have to have a closet in it to lend money? Interesting
I
question.
think if you marketed a property as a bedroom and it didn't have a closet, you're going to catch some grief from potential buyers.
You may catch some grief, but the state
They're
code
going to be
says.
like, dude,
But the
where are
state,
we going to put our clothes?
the state code says you don't have to have it. That doesn't define it
Your
as.
thoughts on that?
I don't know. I was 9 before I made it to the top of the stairs, and I realized there was this whole world out there. So I'm not sure I have an appropriate
There's a
perspective
set of
on what's a
stairs,
bedroom. I think, again, it's easy to get wrapped up in stuff, and this is important for developers who are building things and want to check the box of a bedroom. It's what the consumer says is a bedroom.
Yeah.
If I'm willing to put a child there and I have a lot of flexibility with what I'm willing to do, then that's what defines a bedroom. It's how we want to use the space, and does the space work well to do that? There's certainly tried and true things that will handle it for 85% of the consumers, but in the end, it's still the consumer that tells us this is something I'm willing to pay for it, this is something I'm not.
So the question I want, but it's not always the consumer, Mr. Beckham, right? It's now what the appraiser is going to say it is. And that's the question I want to ask the appraiser. So if the consumer says whatever our definition of a bedroom is a definition, but the appraiser says, well, I'm not lending money on it because it's not a bedroom, what happens then, Coach? So it was just an interesting thought that popped into my head as
Then the value of the space changes.
then the value of the space changes. That's
Yeah.
very much so.
How about this question for Andrew? Reed Goodman on Twitter. Jerry asked Andrew what his thoughts are on Matterport photography and how it could impact the future of real estate.
I think it's cool. Our photographers use it. They love it. I've personally never used it for any of my listings, but it does come in handy when there's a pandemic and people can't necessarily walk through the house, but they can feel like they can walk through the house by clicking buttons on their phone or on their desktop.
Have you ever shown a house via FaceTime to a client?
I have, yeah.
How did that go?
Great.
I've done it a bunch.
Did they buy?
They didn't buy that one, but yeah, it's a lot more common than it used to be.
I've done that quite a few times
And
go ahead.
I'm sorry, I wanted to underline a point. We show them on Facebook. Let's suppose they were interested. Would they have come and seen it in person?
Yeah.
So technology is about being able to say no.
How so? Walk me through that.
Would you ever buy the first house you looked at?
No, probably not.
Yes is not yes until there's a couple no's.
There you go.
And so being confident about a yes as a consumer requires some no's. And technology gives the opportunity to not only see 10 houses, but to see 100, and to FaceTime walk through with your agent and look at that corner of how the washer and dryer sits and go, oh no, I hate that. No.
Yeah.
As opposed to taking time to show up in person and adding that to a big list. So I think a lot of what we have with technology is the ability to narrow down the only certain decisions out of that are no's. All the yeses are followed up with all the real stuff that technology will not take the place of.
So to echo that, of the couple of dozen I've done, only one of them, because they were in Malaysia, didn't come and see it. We bought it from FaceTime. Every other one was to check it off the box or say, yes, I'm driving from so-and-so. I'll be there in 8 hours to go see it. Please schedule it 8 hours from now. I'm ready to take a look at it. So you're 100% right. It's not a yes. It's a no to go ahead and take a look at it to make it a yes.
Nicholas says a bedroom is where the consumer wants to put their bed. That's a very succinct description of a bedroom right there.
This was a heated debate amongst the Smiths playing cards yesterday.
Because Jonah said
at
a
Blenheim.
bedroom has got to have a closet.
She actually did.
And Dan Pettit says he agrees with me. He says you're going to have a hard time finding a buyer that's going to say that a bedroom.
But technically, according to state code, you do not need one. Interesting.
It is very interesting. I'm curious of the.
I'm happy to report I won the card game yesterday.
We saw on Facebook.
But we were debating this during the card game.
And I can guarantee if the inventory continues to drop, we don't build it out.
That's exactly
the consumer's idea and the legal idea of what's a bedroom is going to modify.
That is exactly right.
That's well said. I think that 100% is going to happen. So, Costa, what's your thoughts on 2022 and your footprint for real estate?
In Stanton, Augusta County, over the mountain?
Yeah.
I think it'll be great. I think we're not seeing a lot of things changing, like big changes in terms of anything that would drive consumers out, or specifically like interest rates. Obviously, they can only go up. I don't anticipate they go down much longer, and they haven't been. So I think it's going to be a lot of what we've seen this year and last year.
I think your trajectory, which is different than we have on this side of the mountain that we're sitting at the moment, is I just know by making phone calls to the planning director folks, they have projects in the pipeline.
Yeah.
There is new developments coming in Augusta County and in Stanton and in Waynesboro that are in the pipeline, this approval, submittal, application pipeline, plus talking to the economic development folks over there. There's projects in their pipeline. So this trajectory is just going to continue to grow.
Yeah.
Are you more bullish Augusta County and Waynesboro or bullish Central Virginia?
Oh, Central Virginia, for sure.
You're more bullish Central Virginia?
Yeah, totally.
Despite the fact that inventory levels are at where they're at and price points are where they're at?
Yeah, I just think to quote Mr. Beckham over there, you're just going to go from drive to you qualify to fly to you qualify. You're just going to see this thing going further out. I know that there's folks looking. There's even folks looking in Buckingham County, right, for developments. Who's ever heard that, right? Since 1987.
Yeah.
Never heard that. But they're literally, hey, let's look here. Let's look on the other end of Greene County. The market is the market. We're 5.5 million units short, new construction units short.
Same question for you, QB. More bullish Augusta County. This is a very good question for you because you have offices in both.
I absolutely am. I think there's always been a lot of opportunity in there that has been missed. We have multiple agents that is their hometown and territory that can show you so many things to love about being there. And I think we're also creating a broader perspective amongst our local consumers about what is and is not acceptable. Most of where people choose to live has to do with some internal process about their quality of life and the value for their family. And so I think when you make something completely inaccessible, what else are they going to do but look in other places and realize, oh, well, maybe I wasn't thinking about this correctly. Maybe this will work just fine. It's a lot like switching to an electric vehicle.
I'm ready.
This is the version of real estate range anxiety. Is the car going to go far enough, and is living over the mountain for what I get really that far away?
So I'm more bullish and I'll throw this to you, for first-time home buyers in your neck of the woods.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think your neck of the woods for first-time home buyers is going to be gangbusters.
It's two buyer profiles on the other side, me and the first-time home buyer.
Yeah, Realtor Magazine, Waynesboro, number 3 for boomers to move in the country.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Number 2 was
Charlottesville.
Charlottesville.
Your thoughts on that question?
I 100% agree. I think people who are just out of college, just out of high school, have been working for a few years, early 20s, it's a great place to start a family. I think when you get to be a little bit older, it's also a great place as well because, now they do need to build more homes with first floor masters and affordable homes and maybe all on one floor. But
you take a look at what they're building and what they're advertising and their marketing. A majority of them are first floor masters.
Yeah.
And they're purposely hitting those two
I
buyers.
would think the first floor master should become the new norm, and it's the first floor.
It should be,
primary suite.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it should be the new norm.
Thank you. Thank you.
I mean,
for correcting.
because it appeals to everybody.
Thank you for correcting.
Yeah. Don't you think that should be the new norm?
Well, I've thought it was the new norm since 1987 because of 3/4 of the homes I built, of the hundreds and hundreds I built, had a master bedroom on the primary bedroom on the first floor. I never understood why. It's a wider profile to it. But the reason they can do that, let's get a little geeky here, the reason they can do it there and they can't do it so much in Charlottesville in the urban ring is I've got the room there, right? Mm-hmm. I can get a 50-foot wide lot.
Yeah.
Right.
I need the width to do that, right? I need the width to do a primary owner suite, a secondary. Some of these homes have primary and secondary owner suites on the first floor. Absolutely. On that 2-car garage, yada 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 yada. You need the footprint, the lot footprint to do that, which you do not have here.
Roger West. Let's close on this. Roger West, the loan officer, mortgage officer. What other tools do you guys think the real estate market will need as we deal with the pandemic as the new normal?
Face masks.
Face masks.
Hand sanitizer.
I've got an answer, Mr. Beckham. You go first. Education. I think we need more education. I think education. I think one of the greatest assets, in my opinion, that GAR provides us as realtors are two things. One is the MLS, which is trusted data, which I'm not getting from other sites.
Yeah.
And the second thing is education. This field we're in is moving by the minute, by the month, right? And at least, and hats off to Quinton and the president of CAR, is we get this updates all the time. And if you take the time to read it and educate yourself, you need to be educated, because when Mr. Miller and Mrs. Miller asks me a specific question, did I say that wrong? Ask me a specific question, I have the information that I can provide. So to me, it's education.
I think things like this too are hugely, because we can talk about things
you got a ton
openly.
of people watching here.
Yeah, I think having the
The
opportunity.
long format is the key.
Yeah, I think having the opportunity for people to talk about things openly and discuss, hey, what's going on in this area, what's going on in this area, and working it out and
Mr. Beckham?
processing it.
I think
right up your alley,
I think there's two things. I think one, there's so much that goes on that has potential, but one of the stakeholders in the process kills it. You might have 6 people come together to create an development, to create affordable housing, to do whatever it is they're doing to increase inventory, and one of the stakeholders involved just can't buy into it. And so I think we need a better cohesion around the idea that housing and continued inventory stock is the river that spins the water wheel of our local economy, and that the more you cut that off, the slower that wheel spins.
So the question
and
becomes,
everything else suffers from it. We're worried about what's going to happen 3 years from now when a development goes in, and how's that going to impact schools and roads. It's not going to matter if we don't let anything happen for 10 years, because all those things are going to suffer as a result of it. We're talking
Good
about
answer for Eric.
We're talking about businesses that are moving in to Waynesboro, Augusta, Fishersville, Stanton, and up into Harrisonburg, and you're seeing housing development, you're seeing sales tax, you're seeing things that are not necessarily one person's increase in real estate tax starting to happen in these areas because they're allowing this development to occur. And so I think we need that shared understanding of how this impacts everything we have right now. And so the first thing I think we need is the recognition that it's not a zero-sum game. It is totally possible for me to win and you to win at the same time. And I think the second thing is the same thing we're going to need for years to come, and that's more inventory. There's not enough options, rental or sale, upsize or downsize. There's simply not enough options, and until we have enough, it's going to be harder and harder to address the idea that it is not a zero-sum game.
So on that zero-sum game, one of the things I enjoyed the most about our conversation we had on Friday with the Fulvana County candidates are running, they never really got into it, but they are in two very different parties, the two folks that were talking. One was a Democrat, one was a Republican. But at the end of the day, they were communicating with each other, trying to move the community forward. So realizing it wasn't a zero-sum game on that end of it. But great answer, Mr. Beckham.
Andrew Costa, you did well.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks
it's a
for
pleasure to
having
have
me.
you. Our pleasure.
That's great.
Andrew Costa, if you guys are looking to buy and sell, trusted advisor right here. I think he just proved his talents and his experience. Quinton Beckham always does well. Keith Smith, the plans for tomorrow, sir.
So like I said, we're going to have a loan officer, Scott Morris, and an appraiser by the name of Ellis. First name is Wendy Ellis. Thank you for reminding me. And we're gonna ask some questions. We've been trying to get an appraiser to sit down and talk to us forever, but those folks are busier than the three of us all put together. And so I'm just super excited about asking some questions. Maybe we won't ask the bedroom question. We'll get away from that here. It might take up too much time. But I'm excited about it, excited about that whole conversation. And then Friday, we're going to talk a little bit more about candidates. So we're looking forward to it.
I'm looking forward to it as well, guys. It's the Monday Market Monitor. We're live on every social platform possible, presented by Closure Title and Settlement Company, Ally Property Management, and Yes Realty Partners. Thank you for joining us on a Monday. We will see you at 12:30 for the I Love CVille show. For Quinton, Andrew, Keith, and Judah, my name is Jerry. Thank you kindly for joining us. You guys have a good morning. Take care.
Who do you have today at 12:30?
Here's some